Okay, an update on the doors. So I need to cut these out. I've been putting it off for a while, trying to figure out what's the best tool to do it. You'll see I marked a line on here. Two reasons. One, band says within 1/8 of an inch. And also it just makes it easier for me to see the line as I'm cutting because you get a lot of dust buildup. I did try the oscillating tool. It's okay, but ultimately I end up going back to the Dremel. I don't know, the Dremel just seems to make it easier. It's an easier cut. So I have one done, kind of. At least the first rough cut, which is up here. I'm not sure how good you'll see this, but oops, one thing I did forget is I kept the flange on the back and I cut it off on the front by mistake. So don't do that. It just makes it easier if you can have the flanges on here so you can cleco it back on and align it and sand it down. But you know, initial cut seems to be okay. I don't see anything too glaring about it. Like I said, it's pretty rough. Next thing I'll do is I'll take the hand sander and I'll sand this down nice and smooth and just slowly kind of sand it down to get it to where it needs to go. But I think, you know, you do want to take it slowly just to make sure that you don't cut too much off. Again, it's fiberglass, so you can always repair it, but it's better not to have to do that than to have to do it. Now I got to go cut the other one, and hopefully this time I'll remember, leave the flange on there, or at least the cleco hole so you can put it back up. And this is what it looks like if you remember to put the tabs in. So it's cut again, rough cut it out, but you can already see that here, like I cut it pretty close. So it's pretty good here. Obviously it needs to be sanded flat. We need around the corners down here. But overall, pretty good, at least for this phase. Next thing is sand it and get it to fit in here pretty good. So it gets recessed in. And once I get it to that point, then I think the next thing are putting the hinges on there so you can hinge the doors and refit them again. Okay, so here's my initial sanding of the doors. Just kind of rounded out the corners, straightened some things up a bit as I go through this. Cut it back a fair bit, not too much though, nothing crazy. You know, you're gonna wish, if you cut off that tab, you're gonna wish you hadn't, because it's just, it'd be pretty nice to be able to just cleco in place. But, you know, overall it's going okay. It's just slow as I'm using a hand sander. But one of the things that I've concluded here is as you sand this down, once you get close, you really do want to probably just keep sanding it on a 45, because that's what you're going to need it to get to anyway. And if you look here, you'll see if you sand it until you see the seam, once you cut that 45, it's actually going to move away from it. So you really do want to sand it probably when you get reasonably close, like I am here. Start doing it on a 45, and that way you're basically always putting your 45-degree angle in there at all times. I'm not doing much with the bottom yet because I'm expecting that as this gets beveled in here, this whole door, because you see it's above the frame here, is going to settle down. So I'm going to have to trim the bottom again anyway. So I don't know that it's a lot of purpose or point in just trying to do that now. But yeah, initial, I think, you know, I used my drill here with the sanding bit on it. I used that to kind of initial round out the corners and get rid of some extra that I had here, get rid of some uneven spots. It's just quicker. And I've been using my hand sander for the rest. Now, when you're doing the 45-degree bevels, that works okay on the bottom because it's nice and flat. This is curved, doesn't work so good. Across the top it works okay. Over here it's okay, but again, it doesn't work so good. So I'm probably gonna go get, you know, probably a 6-inch block, maybe something that has some flex to it, to use it to sand it and see how that works out. But other than not having a cleco on this side, which, you know, I could just drill a couple of holes in this, attach a plate and have it in here, but why bother? On the other side, I think it'll be the same, except over here, of course, I've got the clecos to hold it in. But again, you know, at least I'm figuring out how to do this on that side. And that way, as the pilot, I'm not gonna have to look at this one. So any imperfections in this are gonna be less of a concern for me. But, you know, once you get it settled in here and sanded down, I think it'll be fine anyway, as you're gonna do some filler around it and so on. But figured I'd share this as well, just kind of that initial sanding. And next up, I'll keep working on this one. I'll probably rough sand the other door just to get it kind of shaped, and you know, just start working away at them until I at least can get the hinge on. Once I get the hinge on, I'll be pretty happy. And then the other thing is, I think I'm gonna have to cut down more of this. You'll see it's kind of sitting on it, so it's not actually gonna settle down. I'm gonna have to cut some more of this off, sand it off, so the door will sink into the airframe. There you have it. Making some progress. You can see here, it's actually starting to come across. On the top, you can really start to notice it in just watching the gap here, but it's getting pretty flush. I did cut it down a bit, and now I'm sanding it on a bevel on that 45, and just constantly removing some and sanding it on 45. Slow process, but it'll get there. Just need to take my time, I guess, not rush it, but slowly but surely. Of course, a couple of things, like on the top, it'll become flat. On the sides, it's not going to until, obviously, I take this cleco out and it can pop in. But first I need to sand it down. On this side, because I did cut off the tab, that's not a problem, but still taking my time with it. The other thing that you need to be careful of, or remember, is at least when I cut and sanded the interior for doing this door up here, I cut just enough so it could sit, and I could cleco it onto the outside. Now, of course, I need it to sit recessed in. So you want to make sure you keep looking at that. I had to remove a fair bit so that I've got a gap here that it's not this piece preventing it from sliding into the slot. So just one of those things you got to watch out for. Anyway, I'm guessing there's definitely a few more days just to get this first door roughed in, and hopefully learn some things about it. Now, what I have done is I'm still using the 12-inch sander. I use that for really moving some coarse stuff. Like for instance here, I can see that it's not close, so I can use that to sand it down. And then I have a wooden block over here that I use to put in the bevel, and also on these curved surfaces here, just to kind of cut that in. And you can see up here, see how the gap is coming in on the 45, right up here. So it's getting there. And yeah, we'll just keep trudging away. Slow but sure wins the race, I guess. You can see here on the bottom, it's now aligned with the bottom here. I need to bevel it a little more, get around the corners here, bevel it. You can see here, but you can see there's a bit of a gap in here now. I gotta kind of bevel all that out. Right, this side is starting to fit in here. And then on the top, you can see really how it's flush on the top. Again, some beveling I need to do along this edge as well. Maybe cut it back a little bit and bevel it. And then over here, it's looking pretty good. So I'd say another session of sanding and I'll have a fit good enough to start looking at the hinges in it. But just to give it a comparison here, well, actually I can see it across the top here pretty easy. You know, that's the height we started with. Now we're nice and flush. Again, I'll emphasize it, at least for me, as I was doing this, I really had to continue to keep cutting this down to make sure I had a gap here so that I could, it's not pushing back on it. And then this door didn't have both of the tabs. And even when it had the tabs, originally it didn't have the right holes in them. They didn't line, so I put it in. I cut it off. It just seemed to be something that was holding it off. So once I got close, I just cut the tabs off. I'm not sure if I'll do the same on this side, but here's a great example. You can really see how far this is off compared to the other side, right? Big gap. It's coming there, but this one, the tabs, I think lined up better. But even on this, if you look, I think the cuts are maybe even a little better. Like the line here, you can already see, you know, if I trim this down to that scribe line, it looks like this will be the right thickness here. And again, then I just got to bevel it in. So, and I'll chop that off. And then on this side, no, it'll be the same thing. There's a gap between the skin and the edge of the inside of the door. I'm guessing I'll have to make something up for that. But now that I've done this door, I think I've had, I'm guessing maybe 10 hours so far of sanding in it. The other side, I think it will be a little quicker because I know how I do it. And oh, one thing I did change is I started getting the front lined up, the top, and then the front. And then I started working the back because the back is straighter, so it's easier to kind of manipulate. So that's where we are. And of course, I still haven't smoothed out any of the windows yet. So once I get this fitting and I get the hinges on here, then I'll start finishing some of this off, get the fit good, make sure it opens and closes properly. And then I'll go fill in the voids that I've got, and I'll smooth out the inside for the window and just kind of start prepping a lot of that stuff out as well. But yeah, there we go. Well, pilot side door started on it. It's interesting, slowly getting it there, but there's a fair bit to cut off, but you can see I'm starting to get the gap in here, which actually looks like it shows up pretty good in the camera. Trimming that back on the top and up along here as well. The one thing that's interesting is on this one anyway, this lip here looks like it's a little extra wide. So I think I got like a millimeter I'm gonna have to cut off here yet. So keep trimming it down, beveled it a little bit. Again, in here, making sure I got a gap so that doesn't become a problem. You can see right here, for instance, if I push down, it's touching, which means it's not gonna fit in here perfectly until I trim it down a little more. But good enough for what I'm trying to do right now. And I would say definitely having the clecos on here, both sides, makes it a little easier because the door always goes back in the same position. So when I trim the back here, I know that that'll be done. And when I trim the front, it'll be done and it won't tip. Now, obviously, once I put the hinges on it and start swinging the door, I'll have to continue to tweak it, but I think it's heading down the right path. But figured, may as well get it done, get the sanding out of the way because it's quite the mess with the fiberglass. And I'd like to get this done as much as possible so I can work on some other things without having to worry about all this fiberglass dust getting all over the place inside the cockpit. Anyway, figured I'd share it. Cheers. Roughing out the pilot side door. Getting close, I cut off the tabs because I don't think it's going to go in properly with the tabs on it, so I cut those off. I'm getting there with the gap. The only thing I've noticed so far, now mind you I haven't tweaked it yet, is the gap on this side. It's a little more than this one, but you know, once I put the hinge on there, we'll see. Still not sure yet if I should continue sanding it down or mount the hinge so that the door falls the way it's going to fall. And that way I'm just sanding it to get it to fit. But I want to make sure it's actually going to go all the way in. So I need to sand the bottom here, which I already have done on this side. And so if I lift it up a little bit, it'll go in there. So still trying to decide, but getting there. Well, this is pretty much the last step I'm going to do on the doors without hooking them on and putting the hinge on here. It's pretty close. I adjusted this one a little bit. The gap up here was too much and I didn't like it, so I've moved that up. You know, all in all, it's a little time consuming. Now down here you'll see reason it's not in is because the bottom, but I don't want to cut the bottom too short. Till I get the hinge on, I don't know what it's going to do. So I figured I'll wait, put the hinge on, and then I can trim the bottom down to the final size once I do that. And it'll go inside the frame. But both doors now done. So that one's done. The pilot side. And you can kind of see here already, it's already moved in quite a bit. Same in the back. Again, it's pushed out because it's not in on the bottom. I think it'll be okay, and when it's not, you can always ferret in. But pretty close. So the next thing I'll do now is put the hinges on there, get it swinging on the hinges, trim it down a bit, and I still need to fill it and then kind of smooth it out. The one thing I will say is when I looked at the book Vans, what they tell you to do is pin it on, cut it down to the edge, and then do the 45. Maybe that would have worked. I don't know. That's not what I did. I kind of cut it, beveled it, cut it, beveled it, try and get it in as much as possible. But I think to each his own, and you might want to figure out what's the best way for you to do it. Won't really know how good the fit is until obviously I get the hinge in there. But I'll say it again, you know, this up here, you really do need to trim it back. You need to watch it because it can keep the door pushed out, and on the other side it did quite a bit. And once you trim that back, then it goes in pretty nicely. So if you look up here, right, it's pretty close. Again, I've got more of this trimming to do once I get the bottom done, but I'm not going to do it until I put the hinges on the doors. So that's it for this phase of the doors, I'm guessing. And next steps will be going on to the hinges. Okay, I think this is the last one before I put the hinges on. It's in pretty good. It'll still need to be trimmed down on the bottom. I just don't want to trim it too much and find it's too short. I know a lot of people trimmed it right on in. I may do a little more sanding on the back, but it's pretty good as I put it in here. And then this side, I think fits even a little better. Mind you, it's about the same, I guess, but when I push it in, you can see it goes in pretty good. And of course, it'll be faired. And then down here, it's being pushed out because of the inside of the door, but it's not bolted in yet. So once I get it bolted in, I can sand this pretty thin at the bottom just to close it. And I think it'll be good, and same with here. So I think right now what my next step will be is to put hinges on here and see how well they swing. But I don't know, still not sure yet. I've seen some people, like I said, where they've trimmed this right down and it fits inside. I'm not sure if that's the right thing to do or not, but we'll see once I get to the hinge section. But like I said, here you can see it's pretty close. So that's it for now.